This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So, I don't think this is too controversial a statement to make. So, whilst Fractal make probably the most expensive modelers, I think they also make the best modelers, probably. I think they are still the king of modelling, and let me know in the comments if you disagree with that. There are, of course, plenty of other competitors in the space, but this video is going to be talking about why I think Fractal is still the king of modelling, even though most days I will use an HX Stomp. I think Line 6 are, for me, a close second, and there are things that I prefer about Line 6 in some ways. In particular, I quite like that they're available for people to try in shops, and I quite like that they've made something so awesome as the HX Stomp, which is accessible to so many because the price is decent. Now, I most often use the Fractal FM3, which is priced in the UK at about $12.49, which is still cheaper than the Quad Cortex, still cheaper than the Tone Master Pro. I think it's about the same price as a Line 6 Helix, cheaper than a Kemper. So although there is a perception that Fractal gear is always more expensive, I think now that there are other flagship products around, the Fractal FM3 is quite affordable in comparison to them. And now the rest of this video is going to be talking about the reason that I think actually you get the most value for your money with Fractal gear in any case. So, point one is that you get the most amps, and I guess if we're interested in modelling, what we're really interested in is algorithms, and what we're really interested in therefore is the quantity, assuming that you find that the Fractal stuff is of good quality, which I think almost no one disagrees with. I think almost everyone that you'll find on the internet and that uses these things will probably tell you that the Fractal amp modelling is incredible. Within the Fractal ecosystem, we have over 300 amps, and you have the most Dumbles, several Dumbles. You have the most train wrecks, you have the most Fenders, you have the most Marshalls. Basically anything that you can shake a stick at, you're going to have a version of it in the Fractal world. You've got countless kind of classic era 60s Fenders. You've got tweed Fenders. You just got basically anything that you can think of. I guess the one area that you might have a bit of a downside might be amps for bass players, in which case I think the Helix HX Stomp might be more ideal for a bass player. But the most amps, more than you get in any of the other products. Now, the one caveat to that is that products like the Kemper and the Quad Cortex, and I guess Tone X, you have capture technology, which Fractal do have on the Axe-Fx 3, but they don't on the FM9 and the FM3. I think the idea kind of is really that the modelling, and I'm more of the view that modelling is more useful than capture anyway. Capture is quite a nice, quick solution, but for me, I think it's actually a little bit of a dead end when you think about the endless kind of stream of captures you'd have to even cover like 10% of the parameters that you might get in any one rig. So that's the one kind of downside with the Fractal stuff if you're into that capturing and profiling thing. The other key area that I think Fractal still have a massive head start on is the number of effects, and Fractal have been pretty serious about their effects since the start, and very early on adopters like John Petrucci, Steve Vai, folks like that have been using the Axe-Fx stuff, the Edge as well, for their effects, especially because these people tended to use other expensive rack gear and then found the Fractal stuff did a really good job. And again, this is an area where you're going to have a huge scale of effects more than the other devices, and within that as well, and the same with the amp modeling, the same with the effects, they kind of show their workings, and this is what makes me think that probably the Fractal stuff is the most authentic, is because they do the most to show you how they're getting these results, essentially, right? If you go in and you look at changing speaker impedance curves, you go in and you look at changing the way that the, whatever, cathode follower bias, you change all these things, they are showing you on the page, if you want to get into that level of detail, how it is that they've put this stuff together, right? Or Cliff specifically. It's pretty clear, and we're told in school and stuff like that, show your workings. Well, Fractal have made it pretty much possible that you can go in there and you can do real world kind of tweaks on these amps and effects. It's kind of crazy in that regard. Most amps, most effects. There's been quite a spate of, from Cliff, he had a little bit of a frenzy where he's gone and he's added in an EVH Stealth, he's added in a 2203, he's added in a Fuzz, he's added in a Nobels. He's added in loads of stuff really quite quickly. I think you get the most frequent updates with the Fractal stuff. So if that's something that's of value to you, then Fractal definitely is the place where you're getting the most regular firmware updates. It's been a little while since we've seen stuff from the FM3 and FM9. I believe, hopefully, they're working on the gapless preset switching for both of those units, which has come to Axe-Fx 3. So Axe-Fx 3 tends to get the updates first, and then it's sort of rolled out between the FM9 and FM3. That tends to be the way it is. Not always, but it tends to be the way. This is the way. And also then, you get the most out of your buttons with the Fractal stuff. So I'm going to show you on the screen now. You get the most out of the buttons that you have on a Fractal unit than the buttons you get on any other unit. What I mean by that is, one press, we've got scene 1. Then we have an alternative, which is toggled to scene 5. Then we can long press for scene 8. So with one switch, we've got 3 functions. We've got the first press, the toggle, and then a long press. Likewise, here, scene 3, scene 4, long press, scene 7. Okay, and then here, lead, another press, alternate lead, and then we long press. For me, I get taken to tap tempo and tuner. And then long press again, I get sent home. No other unit really gets even close to that amount of kind of foot switchability. Effectively, I can do a live gig here, and I've got access to 8 scenes which have, you know, different tones, different things going on. Also, pair this with the channels thing, where you've got basically 4 channels per block, which can all be distinct with distinct settings. You've got really, really, really powerful opportunity with the Fractal gear to get loads out of just 3 buttons. The downsides in some regards, as I say, this is priced, the FM3 in particular, cheaper than the Quad Cortex. It's of course not quite as powerful as the Quad Cortex, because the Quad Cortex has like 4 processors in it, and you can't do things like dual amping with the cheaper FM3, but super practical gigging device. And I think the amp modeling and effects and all of that stuff on there sounds so good that they sort of eclipse a lot of the benefits that Quad Cortex had anyway. And in terms of flexibility of foot switching, the Quad Cortex only quite recently had the ability to have stomps and scenes, whereas all along the Fractal foot switching has been really incredibly flexible. As I've sort of just shown you, you can foot switch between layouts, and within these layouts you've got a toggle and long hold, so like 3 settings for every single foot switch. It's pretty bonkers. So if you imagine with your FM9, that's even more flexible, because one of these foot switches is kind of crazy powerful compared to most of the competition. So downsides, in terms of usability, there is a definite learning curve with the Fractal stuff, but there is a community of people online. Hopefully I'm one of those that do a tiny bit to illuminate some of what it can do. I still very much feel like a Fractal noob, because there's so much stuff in there that any time I dip my toe in the water, so I do videos for G66, who are the European distributors for Fractal, there's something new to be found. It never really gets boring, because there's just so much, and you think, well, what would happen if I changed this? You can get really into tweaking if you want, or you can just play the presets that you've made, or it has the most usable factory presets as well. I think that's probably fairly uncontroversial as well. The factory presets in the Fractal stuff do sound really good and pretty much ready to go. So for that reason, I think the Fractal stuff, although perception-wise seems expensive, not actually when you think about it in terms of placing it amongst some of the peers in the space. And certainly like a used FM3, I think you pick them up for about £800. I think that's really, really good value. When you think that the folks that are trying to knock this off the top spot, particularly I'm looking at Fender ToneMaster Pro or Quad Cortex, they're basically not quite ready products in a lot of ways. And although they might have better interfaces, what's going on under the hood in a lot of cases is not necessarily as good as Fractal. So we're talking about things like aliasing, oversampling. We're talking about what the actual capabilities of the unit are in terms of tone, showing your workings in terms of how are you actually modeling these amplifiers. Are they really authentic? I think you can be fairly confident that the Fractal stuff is in a way that, particularly with recent revelations, possibly you can't with these newer flagship models. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you've got an opinion on that, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Have you moved away from Fractal or to Fractal? Were you happy with it or not? Have you got anything else that you think stands right up there with Fractal? Love to know your thoughts. Cheers for stopping by.